and this is CBX Business News. The business news headlines are brought to you by QMax Wealth Management, making more possible. Land modernization, tourism concerns emerge, and Africa pushes for green growth financing. Good evening and welcome to CBX Business News for Tuesday, May 12, 2026. I am Rashel Moncrieffe. Thanks for joining us. Coming up, Jamaica launches a $9 million land administration modernization project aimed at improving efficiency, titling, and investment access. Also ahead, the Bahamas Election Day alcohol ban sparks tourism and business concerns as stakeholders warn of possible economic disruption. And later, African leaders push for expanded financing and green industrial growth as the continent seeks to position itself in the global energy transition. Stay with us as we unpack these stories and more right after the break.
This project marks the celebration of our 30th Hall of Fame and aims to highlight the achievements, challenges, and invaluable lessons of those who have shaped and are shaping the future of our economy. Our aim is to celebrate the voices and stories of 30 remarkable leaders in Jamaica's private sector. Join us as we explore these narratives of resilience, leadership, and vision.
The local news is brought to you by Derrimon Trading, better from the start. The Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments. Welcome back to CBX Business News. We begin with the government's latest bid to unlock the economic value of Jamaica's land assets. The government of Jamaica is moving to overhaul Jamaica's land administration system in a bid to accelerate investment and unlock billions of dollars in underutilized land assets across the economy. Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness made the declaration earlier today during the launch of the Land Administration Capacity Enhancement Project, a $9 million initiative being funded through a partnership with the Korea International Cooperation Agency.
Through a partnership with the government of Jamaica and the Korea International Cooperation Agency, we are strengthening the institutional skills, systems, and technologies that will enable Jamaica to administer land more efficiently, more transparently, and more productively. COICA is providing a grant of up to US $9 million. That's approximately 1.42 billion Jamaican dollars. And this will run from 2025 to 2031.
He says the long-term goal is to build a land management system capable of supporting economic development at scale.
We are building a Jamaica where land supports productivity, where public records support certainty, where technology supports service delivery, where government capacity supports national development. The Land Administration Capacity Enhancement Project aligns with our vision of a modern, efficient, digital, and development-oriented public sector. It supports inclusive growth. It supports investment. It supports resilience. It supports better planning. It supports formalization of assets and empowerment of citizens.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Holness is urging Jamaicans to formally title their land, warning that informal ownership and underutilized property are preventing the country from fully realizing its economic potential. The Prime Minister says Jamaica's next phase of development will depend heavily on whether land can be transformed from a passive asset into an active economic driver.
We are entering into a new phase of our development. We have, over the last decade and a half, greatly sacrificed to achieve fiscal stability. The next phase must now be robust, sustained economic growth. And as I had said earlier in my presentation, one of the important pillars of the economic growth which we seek is proper land administration. And when we say proper land administration, we want to be able to identify uniquely who owns the land.
Holness also argues that land cannot remain an underutilized asset if Jamaica is serious about driving long-term economic growth.
We want to ensure that people who want to use the land for productive purposes can get access to use the land for productive purposes. We want to ensure that land, which is a natural asset, can also become a financial asset by acting as collateral for financing.
That was Jamaica's Prime Minister, Dr. Andrew Holness. Fear, confusion, and growing uncertainty inside the workplace are emerging as major challenges for businesses trying to adapt to artificial intelligence, AI. Speaking at the launch of findings from the Salises Public Affairs AI Readiness Study earlier today, Chairman of the National Artificial Intelligence Task Force, Christopher Record, says many companies are seeking to integrate AI into daily operations, even as workers remain uncertain about how the technology could reshape their jobs and long-term role inside organizations.
Every time that I've had to go into offices to implement technology, you have to get over this fear. And we've been doing it over and over again. So when the first time I was lifting up those computers to go and install in people's office, remember those days, Maria, right? Cutty, what we used, Cuthbert Lloyd, IBM, we were partners for decades, and when we were implementing systems and solutions, we had to go in and reduce that fear and try to explain and then train and then make it approachable and easily approachable. So, Prof. Waller, we're still doing the same thing with AI now, but AI is a little bit more scary because AI just does a few things on its own. Overall, we have to be balancing out the human component. How are we introducing this thing in the organization, reducing the fear? And of course, a lot of it is connected directly to leadership and management in the organization. And the people who do it wrong are having problems, and the people doing right are benefiting positively.
That was Chairman of the National Artificial Intelligence Task Force, Christopher Record. In financial news, Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited is reporting a sharp increase in first quarter earnings, driven by higher traffic volumes, expanded toll operations, and continued debt reduction across its highway network. The toll road operator posted net profit of $13.2 million for the 3 months ended March 2026, a 46% increase compared with $9.1 million in the corresponding period last year. Revenue climbed 29% to $29 million as traffic activity strengthened across the network. Trans-Jamaican says the performance was supported by increased commuter traffic, wider adoption of electronic toll payments, and contributions from the Maypen to Williamsfield leg of Highway 2000, which added roughly $3.5 million in revenue during the quarter. The company also says disciplined cost controls and lower finance expenses linked to ongoing debt repayments helped strengthen margins even as operating and administrative expenses increased during the period. We move to the latest updates from the JSE equities. In Tuesday's trading session, the JSE market activity resulted in the trading of 113 stocks, of which 41 advanced, 50 declined, and 22 traded firm. Leading the winners are First Rock Real Estate Investments USD, Productive Business Solution USD Ordinary Shares, Cargo Handlers, and JMMB Group 7.15% cumulative redeemable preference share. While leading the losers are Cygnus Real Estate Finance USD, Margaritaville Turks USD, Palace Amusement Company, and Limnas and Bards. The main index declined by 13.44 points to close at 348,009.66 points. The junior market index, however, advanced 10.65 points to close at 3,135.40 points. It's time for the Market Education feature, brought to you by CARICRIS, Regional Ratings, Global Standards. In today's Market Education feature, we're looking at the term client-facing. A client-facing role is a position that involves direct interaction or communication with customers. These roles are important because they help businesses understand client needs, resolve issues, and maintain strong customer relationships. Client-facing positions are often called front office roles since they involve regular contact with the public, unlike back office jobs that have little direct customer interaction. Examples include customer service representatives, sales associates, hotel receptionists, insurance agents, and real estate professionals. That was the Market Education feature, brought to you by CARICRIS, Regional Ratings, Global Standards. And that's it for the local news segment. Please stay with us. The regional news is up next. The local news is brought to you by Derrimon Trading, better from the start. The Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments.
Caribbean Dreams, instant turmeric tea. What you put in is what you get out. What you put in is what you get out. Yeah. Build up your body, boost up your brain. Take on the world now. Say bye-bye pain. Caribbean Dreams, instant turmeric tea. Be good to you. Caribbean Dreams, instant turmeric tea. Distributed by Amalgamated Distributors Limited. It smells so good right now. Feeling so good right now. Yeah, yeah. It smells so good right now. Feeling so good right now. Yeah, yeah. It smells so good right now. Don't never, ever, ever wanna calm down. No, no, no. Yeah, yeah.
Welcome back. In the regional business news, Dominica is moving to shield citizens from rising fuel costs as global oil prices continue to squeeze households, businesses, and government finances. The government says temporary fuel subsidies and tax reductions are now being prepared as global crude prices continue to climb. Speaking at a national press conference recently, Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit notes gasoline prices have risen to nearly $18 to date from just under $15 per gallon in February, while diesel has surpassed $20 per gallon. To protect businesses and consumers, Skerrit says the government expects to reduce fuel taxes later this month.
To cushion the impact of rising fuel prices, government will be in a position to provide a subsidy of $1.50 to $2 per gallon through reduced fuel taxes by the end of this month, when the next cycle will come in, price review, that is end of May 2026.
Skerrit says while the relief measures are intended to ease the pressure on transport operators, fishermen, and businesses, the subsidies will also place additional strain on public finances.
Fuel subsidies represent a growing burden on the Treasury of Dominica that directly impacts government's ability to fund health, education, infrastructure, and disaster recovery. Government will continue to review fuel pricing monthly to balance consumer protection with responsible fiscal management. In the long term, Dominica's energy security depends on accelerating our transition to renewable energy.
That was Dominica's Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit. Meanwhile, an election day restriction in the Bahamas is shining the spotlight on the delicate balance between national policy and tourism economy. A temporary nationwide alcohol ban imposed during today's general election has now been lifted after a 10-hour restriction that also applied to resorts and cruise line-owned private islands. Under long-standing election regulations, alcohol sales were suspended from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., while polling stations remained open. The restriction extended to major tourism operations, including Royal Caribbean's Coco Key. The move has sparked criticism from some visitors and cruise passengers who reportedly expressed frustration over the timing of the announcement, saying it affected vacation plans and tourism spending. Nevertheless, major cruise operators complied with local regulations, although alcohol remained available on board ships. The restriction forms part of the long-standing election day measures enforced in several Caribbean countries aimed at maintaining public order during voting hours. As tourism remains the backbone of the Bahamian economy, industry observers say even short disruptions can have ripple effects on excursion operators, transport providers, and small businesses that depend heavily on visitor activity. However, analysts expect the overall economic impact to be limited given the short duration of the ban, but say the situation highlights how quickly tourism-dependent economies can feel the effects of government policy and visitor perception. And in corporate news, a weaker carnival season has hit one of Trinidad and Tobago's largest media companies. Guardian Media Limited is reporting a wider first quarter loss after weaker advertising activity weighed on revenues. According to the company's unaudited financial results for the 3 months ended March 31, the company recorded a pre-tax loss of 7.5 million Trinidad and Tobago dollars when compared with a $5.5 million loss during the corresponding period last year. Revenues also declined 14% to $17.3 million. The company says the 2026 carnival season failed to deliver its usual commercial boost after some major events were cancelled and others operated with reduced advertising budgets. Management responded by tightening cost controls, cutting operating expenses by $1.2 million or 8% compared with the corresponding quarter in 2025. Despite the loss, Guardian Media says its cash position and balance sheet remain strong as the company works to stabilize revenues in a challenging media environment. It's now time for news from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 22 securities, of which 10 advanced, 2 declined, and 10 traded firm. Today's winners are NCB Financial Group, Trinidad Cement, First Citizens Group Financial Holdings, and National Flour Mills. While leading the losers are Trinidad and Tobago NGL and Massey Holdings. Trading activity resulted in the following movements. The All-TNT Index advanced by 1.95 points to close at 1,413.27. The Composite Index also advanced, but by 5.53 points to close at 982.88. The Cross-Listed Index gained 1.33 points to close at 73.12, while the SME Index remained at 89.81. And we take a short break. But please do stay with us. The international news segment is up next.
We get it! We get the big contract! 50,000 units a month for 3 years! Great! We'll need help.
If you are a business owner that requires capital for the expansion of your business, talk to a registered broker today to find out more about listing your company on the Jamaica Stock Exchange, an efficient alternative to other financing options.
Thank God for the Jamaica Stock Exchange junior market.
The Jamaica Stock Exchange, providing a fair, efficient, and transparent stock market.
Welcome back. On the international scene, African leaders on Tuesday identified financing and green industrialization as critical pillars for long-term economic growth during the Africa Forward Summit 2026, as governments across the continent grapple with high borrowing costs, climate risks, and rising employment pressures. Speaking during the opening session in Nairobi, Kenyan President Dr. William Samoei Ruto says Africa's future prosperity will depend heavily on its ability to mobilize investment at scale, modernize infrastructure networks, and position itself competitively within the global green economy.
First, we must confront with honesty and urgency the question of how Africa finances its own transformation. The era in which Africa's development was principally framed through aid, dependency, and unsustainable borrowing must give way to a new paradigm grounded in investment, innovation, domestic resource mobilization, and strategic partnerships built on sovereign equality and mutual benefit. Because Africa is not part of the global problem. Africa is, in fact, the solution to the global challenges that exist today, including those of Africa.
Meanwhile, African leaders are also intensifying calls for reforms to the global financial system. As Africa pursues broader industrial expansion, concerns are also growing over the cost of financing development across the continent, with governments calling for sweeping reforms to the international financial system. Kenyan President Dr. William Samoei Ruto says structural inequalities within the system continue to place African economies at a disadvantage, limiting investment capacity and raising the cost of development financing across the continent.
The current international financial system remains structurally unequal. African countries continue to face disproportionately high borrowing costs, constrained access to concessional financing, and distorted risk perceptions that are frequently disconnected from economic realities that exist in this continent.
Ruto also reaffirmed support for the creation of an African credit rating agency, arguing that the continent cannot continue relying solely on assessments from institutions linked to the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, IMF.
That is why Africa has supported the establishment of the African Credit Rating Agency, an important step towards ensuring fairer, evidence-based and context-sensitive assessment of African economies and investment opportunities. Its purpose is not to replace existing global institutions, but to correct long-standing distortions in risk perception that continue to increase the cost of capital for African countries and continue to discourage long-term investment into productive sectors. At the same time, we must recognize that the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund alone cannot finance Africa's development ambition.
That was President of Kenya, Dr. William Samoei Ruto. And in the United States, escalating geopolitical tensions are also beginning to push energy costs sharply higher. U.S. energy inflation surged to 17.9% year over year in April 2026, accelerating from 12.5% in March and recording its strongest annual increase since September 2022. The sharp rise was largely attributed to the ongoing Iran conflict and the shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz, which intensified pressure across global energy markets. Energy commodity prices jumped 29.2%, driven by a 28.4% increase in gasoline prices and a steep 54.3% rise in fuel oil costs. Meanwhile, energy services increased 5.4%, supported by a 6.1% rise in electricity prices and a 3% increase in piped gas charges. On a monthly basis, energy prices climbed 3.8% in April, following an even larger 10.9% increase in March. Meanwhile, broader inflation pressures are also beginning to strengthen across the U.S. economy. U.S. annual core inflation increased to 2.8% in April 2026 from 2.6% in March, coming in slightly above market expectations of 2.7% and marking the highest reading since September last year. The increase was largely driven by stronger price growth across services excluding energy, particularly higher costs linked to shelter and transportation. Meanwhile, prices for new vehicles rose at a slower pace of 0.2%, while used cars and trucks recorded a sharper decline of 2.7%. On a monthly basis, core consumer prices advanced 0.4% in April, representing the largest monthly increase since January 2025. And that's it for the international segment of the newscast. The news recap is coming up on the other side of the break.
How may I assist you today?
I want to open an account for me and my son.
That's great. Let me see your documents. I understand you want to know about our savings account. Let me show you a few accounts and the benefits of each account.
Why do you need so many documents from my mommy?
It's called KYC, Know Your Customer. This helps us to protect you and treat you right. Thanks for the documents. Take a look at this brochure. Let's discuss savings accounts. A savings account is an interest-bearing deposit account. Customers with savings deposit accounts are covered up to $1.2 million per ban, so you don't have anything to worry about.
This financial literacy tip is brought to you by Bank of Jamaica, promoting financial inclusion. For more information, visit our BOJ Real Talk playlist on our YouTube channel.
And And now to recap our top stories. In the local news, Jamaica launches $9 million land administration modernization project. Regionally, the Bahamas election day alcohol ban sparks tourism concerns. And internationally, African leaders push financing green growth agenda. Those were the stories making today's CBX Evening News. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Rashel Moncrieffe. Thanks for watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.